I'm Jack from Coin98. It was great to meet you today in Aptos in Ho Chi Minh City event. This is Mr.
Shamir.
And
I'm Zoe.
Okay, and we will have an interview about the market view, and also we were discussing about how did you build Ferum and Blackwing in the Aptos ecosystem. So can we start right now?
Yeah, for sure. My name's Shamir. Before crypto, I was working at Robinhood. I spent about 4.5 years building primarily their trading infrastructure there, where we basically, started with a team of 3 people, grew it to an org of 60 plus, and grew the system to handle billions of dollars of daily trading volume. I'll let Zoe introduce himself.
Yeah, so I'm Zoe. Was at Facebook for about 6 years. Was one of the early engineers on Messenger, the messaging app. And I helped it to grow from a few million monthly active users to 1 billion monthly active users. Learn a lot about engineering, scaling products to billions of people, and honestly a lot about growth and how to think about growth, how to think about metrics, how to measure what users need and how to amplify it.
So, as I know, I can find the information on Twitter and also the website. There are 2 keywords, is Ferum and Blackwing. I can find that Ferum is an on-chain order book in Aptos, and Blackwing is a spot and perpetual trading protocol on Aptos. So, will the 2 products will working parallel with each other, or will they have any connections with each other? Can you answer this question?
You can take that, yeah. So Ferum is a highly performant order book built on top of the Aptos blockchain. Now, one thing we realize is building the order book is not enough. You actually need to encourage people to go out and build the infrastructure on top of that, or build the user-facing products on top of that order book. So we're also incubating Blackwing, which, like you mentioned, is a perpetuals and spot trading protocol. We're basically doing all of the engineering work and basically getting the product into a state where it can basically be operated and basically be released to people to use. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you for your answer. And the next question is that, as far as I know, right now Aptos is a very young blockchain, and the ecosystem, the DeFi total value locked is around 40 million. When I look at DeFi Llama, the ranking is around 30 or 35. It was quite low total value locked when we're comparing to Ethereum or BNB chains. So is that a difficulties, and how can you overcome that difficulties?
So I used to work at Facebook, and I actually went to high school with one of the founding engineers. I know the caliber and the talent of engineering that goes into Aptos and building this chain. Now, the magic is not going to happen overnight. We're not expecting things to work out tomorrow, the next week, next month. It's going to take some time to build the foundational pieces necessary for an ecosystem to thrive and to grow and to become healthy. That said, we do look at developer growth as a trailing indicator for the ecosystem growth. We've done a lot of kind of analytics before choosing Aptos, before just deciding to build on it. And what we realized was that there's a lot of really good builders, a lot of talent coming to Aptos. What's going to happen is they're going to, build products, they're going to raise funds, they're going to spend some of those funds to go and acquire users, to build new experiences enabled by Aptos. And we think that's going to, over a long period of time, create a dominant position for Aptos. And that's what makes us bullish on building this new ecosystem.
Can I add a little bit? Yeah, so a lot of it is actually from Aptos itself, the chain. We're very bullish on the team that's building it. Because we think strong engineers, like Zoe mentioned, also strong BD. And also, technically, it's probably one of the best blockchains I've developed on. I've built applications on ETH, I've built applications on Solana, and Aptos by far is the best developer experience out of all of them. The other thing, I think that a lot of DeFi protocols end up missing is they don't build good products. Every single DeFi product sucks. So a big thing that we're worried about is okay, how do you engineer systems that people actually want to use? And I think that's, honestly, it's an edge. Robinhood is probably one of the best financial applications. It reduced friction for finance. Facebook is one of the best user-facing applications in the world. Millions of people in Vietnam, for example, rely on it for daily communication. Not just that, for running their business as well, right? So we both cumulatively have so much experience building products that people love. And I think we want to bring that over to DeFi and to crypto. And we're putting a lot of that love and care into Ferum and also Blackwing.
So for Blackwing and Ferum themselves, what is the advantage does these products have in order to attract the people to use the products and also attract the people from other ecosystem to move in and to use the products in the Aptos ecosystem?
Yeah, so I'll talk about Ferum first, right? So Ferum is at its core developer infrastructure. And a big thing about developers is, the analogy that we've used is that developers are like lightning, and they'll take the shortest path, the least path of resistance to get to where they need to be. So a big part of building Ferum is like, okay, how do we make it as easy as possible for people to build applications on top of an order book? On the Blackwing side, it's just about building a perpetuals product that is not adversarial to the user, which I think a lot of DeFi products are. The indexing infrastructure kind of pipes into this as well. We want to have Blackwing actually have notifications enabled from the get-go, rather than somebody using Blackwing when it's launched and then getting liquidated. That's not a good experience because you don't know when that happens. You would much rather be notified when it happens. So we want to make sure that the hooks are in place for Blackwing, for whoever operates it, to actually go and get these notifications and give them to the users. And then also just putting a lot of care into the front end and making sure everything comes together very cohesively, and the overall experience is very snappy. This is another reason why we're actually building on top of Aptos, right? From a technological perspective, you have theoretical max limit of 100K transactions per second and sub-second block finality. Compare that to EVM chains where you're paying sometimes $11 per transaction, and it's quite slow. And if you're doing any sort of DeFi operation, you want that operation to happen as quickly as possible. So I think these user experience edges are what's going to attract people to come and even switch chains and use the product. The other thing I want to talk about just briefly is also enabling people to have infrastructure to actually come onto the chain. So we're thinking a lot about how do we get Aptos as an ecosystem together to make bridging from other ecosystems as easy as possible. Soju, our head of growth for Blackwing, has actually been focused on that and getting the whole Aptos DeFi community together to help drive that effort forward.
Thank you for your answer. So what is the difficulties that right now when you're building the products you have to face it, and how can you overcome that difficulties?
You want to take it?
Yeah, sure. Honestly, building on top of a new ecosystem has been somewhat difficult. From, as Shamir mentioned, liquidity problems, from early adoption of infrastructure providers that are going to come and help us build and launch has been difficult, but it's getting better over time.
So from a technical perspective, right, I think one of the biggest difficulties is gas, actually. Gas? And this kind of extends your point around early ecosystems. So Aptos' gas schedule was pretty poor up until recently, actually. So we worked with the Aptos team. Kevin from Aptos actually very specifically was very helpful. David also, and work with the engineering team to basically be guys, we need to reduce gas to a point where it's actually competitive with Solana. Otherwise, Aptos as a chain is essentially dead on arrival because you're competing in the high throughput space, but your transactions are still costing. They weren't expensive. They were $1 or a couple cents, but a couple cents is still a lot, especially when you're talking about a high throughput order book infrastructure. You need it to be as cheap as possible. So I think that was probably the biggest kind of blocker and difficulty, and the Aptos team honestly were really great to work with to get that fixed. But yeah, I think other stuff is just early ecosystem, like Zoe said. Another specific example is native assets. There's no native USDT or no native USDC, although they are coming very soon. And I think we just need to we don't want to wait around with our hands tied behind our backs and not build a product. So we're trying to work around those solutions, but it's just a little bit of growing pains as they exist with any early ecosystem.
So right now I am a researcher of Coin98 Insights, and there's one thing that I found that a good ecosystem, that is an ecosystem that have a lot of projects, and the project in that ecosystem also linking with each other in order to use the other project products. Like the Avalanche ecosystem, they have the YUSD and also another lending protocol. They use that YUSD. On AMM, they also use that YUSD. And I think the linking between the project in the ecosystem is really important for that project to fully develop in the ecosystem. So what is your view about, what is your perspective or what is your view about my opinion? And how can you linking with another project in the Aptos ecosystem?
Yeah, honestly, this is one of my favorite things coming to crypto, just the ecosystem and amount of love and partnership and folks coming together to help each other grow. We see this in Aptos, from Hippo to one of the aggregators. It's a great company that's joined Aptos and has been helping us a lot. And from Ferum Labs, we've created Furnace. It's an ecosystem-wide community that enables a lot of these connections, a lot of these partnerships. We had a really large hackathon in Korea, actually. It was based in Korea. We had global participation. It's great. Honestly, I'm very excited about seeing some of these projects coming through.
So I think we will have a last question right now. Is comparing to 2022, the current market is much more active. What is your view about the crypto market right now? And if unfortunately the market is continue to experience a long time of winter, so does your team have a plan to face it?
My view is that you're always going to have these cycles because typically markets have cycles. What matters is crypto actually contributing to the world? And in my view, it is. I come from a very traditional financial background where things are not as transparent as they are in crypto. Things are slower than they are in crypto. And honestly, it's in some aspects, it's nice, like when you have hacks. But in other aspects, it's really shitty. One example of this is Robinhood, GME. Because of T+2 settlement, we had to pause trading for GameStop, and it wasn't just Robinhood, it was every single brokerage in the US. But if there was instant settlement, that problem wouldn't necessarily happen. So very bullish on crypto as a whole, and I think because of that, I think in the long run, there will be value in having a distributed, decentralized financial layer for people to work on. I think if you look at growth, Electric Capital actually put out a really good developer growth. Developers are still increasing in the crypto ecosystem. Even if you look at the market, right? Bitcoin prices are still on an upward trend. And I think that's going to continue to happen. So there's going to be volatility, but long term it's going to continue to grow upwards, and we're pretty optimistic about that. In terms of long-term winter, it's just about hunkering down and building. I think at the end of the day, the teams that are going to win and become successful are the teams that are actually going to be able to ship products and not get distracted by market cycles.
Looking for the next 5 years, next 10 years, right? These innovation cycles sometimes take many, many years. And a lot of early builders, early entrepreneurs kind of get upset when the market doesn't budge within the months, right? But months is a very short period of time. If you look at really big innovations in the world, they didn't take over months. They took years. Right? We look at OpenAI and ChatGPT as an overnight success, right? No one heard about it, and today people heard about it. But really, Sam Altman has been working on it for 7 years, right? When they started, people would make fun of him. They would say, there's no way this is going to be a real thing. Right? 7 years, it's a long period of time. So that's the way we think about these things. Where is Ferum going to be 5 years from now? Where is Aptos going to be 5 years? Where is crypto overall as an ecosystem going to be 5 years from now? And when you look at that horizon, and you kind of have a head fixation on where the world needs to go, it becomes a lot easier to weather the storms.
Yeah, I think this is all our interview about all of the question about market and also about Ferum, about your view about how to build the products. Thank you, Shamir, and also thank you, Mr. Zhu, to accepting to join this interview.